Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got another interesting story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Brian, and if not for my car's security camera, I would have never known the truth. I would have gone on believing a lie, thinking my marriage was solid, thinking my wife was loyal. Once I saw it, there was no going back. Now, before we get into the details, I want you to really think about this. How well do you really know your partner? Could they be living a double life right under your nose? Because I used to believe that my wife, Caroline, would never betray me. And yet, here I am, telling you this story. So stick with me till the end, because I want to know what you would have done if you were in my shoes. Would you have handled it the same way? Or would you have done something different? Let's get into it. I've been married to Caroline for 7 years. I never had any reason to doubt her. I've always believed that if you love someone, you don't sit around playing detective. You take their word for it. That's how I saw things, and for 7 years, that belief never wavered. I run a business that keeps me on the move. It's part of the job. Some months, I travel once or twice. Other times, I might be away for weeks. It's not ideal, but it pays well, and I made sure Caroline was comfortable. I always made time for her when I was around. I got back from my latest trip, relieved to finally be home with my wife. After a week of back-to-back meetings, long flights, and barely any rest, all I wanted was a quiet day to settle in. The next morning, I decided to take my BMW 7 Series out for a quick drive to pick up a few things myself. But the moment I started the car, I knew something was wrong. The engine didn't sound as smooth as it should. It had a roughness to it. Then, a maintenance warning popped up on the dashboard. That didn't make sense. I had just serviced the car before I left, and it was running perfectly fine then. There was no reason for it to be acting up now, unless something had happened while I was gone. I walked back inside and found Caroline in the kitchen. I asked her straight up, "Did you drive this car while I was away?" She barely even hesitated before answering. "Yeah, I borrowed it to visit a friend." That was it. No extra details. And at that moment, I had no reason to press further. It was just a car, right? If she needed it, she needed it. I accepted her answer without a second thought. I stormed into the auto shop, frustrated beyond words. The moment I saw the mechanic, I didn't hold back. "What kind of service did you do on my car?" I demanded. "I brought it in just last week before I traveled, and now it's already giving me issues? Do you guys even know what you're doing?" The mechanic, a middle-aged guy with grease-stained hands, wiped his forehead with the back of his arm and looked at me with mild confusion. He didn't argue, didn't get defensive, just let out a small sigh before walking over to my car. Without a word, he popped the hood and started checking things over. I stood there, arms crossed, still fuming. "I swear, I don't know what you guys did, but this is ridiculous. I pay good money to keep this car in top shape, and now it's acting up like it hasn't been maintained in months." The mechanic just hummed to himself, his fingers moving over the engine as he ran diagnostics. A few minutes passed in silence, except for the occasional clicking of his tools. I was expecting him to admit to messing up or at least give me an excuse, but he said nothing. As the mechanic continued diagnosing the issue, he plugged in his scan tool and ran a systems check. Then he moved to the car's infotainment system, navigating through the controls with practiced ease. I was still standing there, arms crossed, waiting for him to admit that they'd botched the last service. But instead of addressing the car's performance, he suddenly turned to me and said something that completely threw me off. "You might want to check your security cam. It recorded something interesting after the service." I blinked, caught off guard. "What?" He didn't look up right away, his fingers still tapping lightly on the infotainment screen. When he finally met my eyes, his expression was unreadable. "Your car has a dash cam, right?" he asked, his tone careful, almost too casual. "If I were you, I'd take a look at the footage. You might find it informative." My frustration over the car's sudden breakdown faded. What the hell was he talking about? What could possibly be on the footage that was worth mentioning? I could tell from the way he said it, this wasn't about some routine engine issue. Something else was going on. I exhaled sharply and pulled out my phone, opening the dash cam app. My fingers hovered over the latest recordings, hesitating for just a second. I had no idea what I was about to see. The footage showed Caroline unlocking my car, getting in, and driving off like it was just another normal day. Just her comfortably behind the wheel, taking the car exactly where she told me she had gone, to her friend's house. The footage didn't stop at her friend's house. Another clip played right after. This time, it wasn't just Caroline. She was still in the driver's seat, but now there were other people in the car, her friends. They were laughing, chatting, hyped about something. I frowned. This wasn't what she told me. She had only mentioned going to her friend's place, not going out together this late. I watched as they pulled out of the driveway and hit the main road that night. I recognized the route immediately. I knew exactly where they were heading. A nightclub. I paused the video for a moment, trying to make sense of it. Caroline never mentioned anything about a girls' night out. If it was just harmless fun, why didn't she tell me? I was confused, but I wasn't ready for the next clip that will change everything. A third clip popped up on the screen. The timestamp was hours later. Caroline was still in my car, but her friends were nowhere to be seen. Instead, she had company, a man I didn't recognize. They were parked in a dark, empty lot. The streetlights barely illuminated the car's interior, but I could see enough. I could see everything. Caroline and this man were leaning toward each other, their faces close, whispering something I couldn't hear. And then, without hesitation, she kissed him. My stomach dropped. I watched as they melted into each other, hands roaming, bodies pressing together like they'd been starving for this moment. This was deep and passionate. They stopped briefly, laughing softly, and my wife passed him the keys, and he got into the driver's seat, and they drove off together. I didn't even need to guess where they were going. The next turn they made was straight toward a hotel. I sat there, completely still. My mind couldn't process what it was seeing fast enough. Just hours before, I had called Caroline that night while I was still on my trip. I asked her what she was up to, just checking in like I always did. And she told me she was home. She lied without hesitation. I should have been focused on the mechanic, who was still working on my car, explaining something about the rough idle issue. But I barely heard a word. My mind was stuck on the reality of what I had just seen. If the security camera hadn't caught this, I would have never known. I would have come back home, kissed her, slept next to her, and carried on like nothing happened. But now I knew, and there was no coming back from it. That evening, I sat across from Caroline at the living room. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. She was scrolling through her phone. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "How was your weekend?" I asked, watching her closely. She barely looked up, replying with a casual, "It was fine." I nodded, pretending to accept her answer before asking, "Did you go anywhere fun?" That's when she hesitated, just for a second. But then she shook her head. "No, I was home all day, just relaxing." She was lying again, but this time to my face, without a flicker of doubt or guilt. I let the silence hang between us for a moment before I placed my phone on the table, unlocked the screen, and pressed play. The footage showed my car pulling out of the driveway, with Caroline in the driver's seat. Her head snapped toward the screen, eyes widening. She sat up straight. "What's this?" she asked, her voice suddenly weaker. I didn't answer. I just let the video keep playing. It showed her meeting up with her friends, all dressed up, laughing, and heading out to the club. I glanced at her. She was blinking fast, her mind scrambling for an excuse. "It's not what it looks like," she muttered, her voice unsteady. I didn't say a word. I just skipped forward. The next clip showed her in the parking lot, tangled up with some guy kissing. That's when she lost it. She shot up from her seat. "Brian, let me explain." Her hands were shaking now, her voice desperate. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking straight. I still didn't speak. I simply fast-forwarded again to the part where it drove off to a hotel. That was when she finally broke. She dropped back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. "I messed up," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was drunk and wasn't thinking straight." I stared at her, feeling nothing but disgust. Alcohol? That was her excuse? The woman I married, the one I trusted, expected me to believe she just accidentally cheated? I leaned back. So, my wife turns into a loose woman the moment she gets drunk. She winced at my words, but didn't argue. That's when it hit me. This probably wasn't the first time. She was way too comfortable lying to me. If my car's camera hadn't recorded her, would she have ever told me? Or carried on, as if she wasn't out there betraying me? I looked at her, this woman I had spent 7 years with, and realized I didn't even know who she was anymore. If this was just one night that I happened to catch, how many other nights had there been? How many times had she lied to my face while I was out there, working hard? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I wasn't just losing my wife, I was losing my entire sense of trust. I spent the next week trapped in my own thoughts, replaying everything in my head. I wanted to believe there was some way to fix this, but there was none. The woman I trusted could lie to my face so easily. If she could do it once, she could do it again. I couldn't live like that, constantly questioning, constantly wondering what else she was hiding. Trust, once broken, doesn't just come back because someone cries and apologizes. By the 7th day, I knew there was no moving forward. That evening, I called Caroline into the living room. She must have sensed something was coming because she sat down cautiously, her fingers gripping the hem of her shirt like she was bracing for impact. I didn't waste time. I told her we were done. No drawn-out explanations. I gave her 2 options. First, we could divorce quietly, no drama, no mess. She would leave, and we would go our separate ways. Or, if she wanted to fight me on this, I had proof. The footage didn't lie. I would make sure everyone saw exactly who she was when she thought no one was watching. I saw the panic settle in her eyes as she realized there was no way out of this. If the video got out, her reputation, her carefully curated image, everything would be destroyed. She opened her mouth probably to beg, to make another excuse, but then she closed it again. She knew there was nothing she could say to change what had already been done. After a long, tense silence, she nodded. She agreed. The next morning, she packed her things. There was no big emotional goodbye, no last-ditch effort to change my mind. Just a woman stuffing her life into a couple of suitcases, knowing she had no one to blame but herself. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't need to. The moment she walked out that door, she was already gone to me. When the dust settled and Caroline was finally out of my life, I found myself sitting alone in our now empty house. I quickly learned that moving on wasn't as simple as just signing divorce papers. The wound didn't close overnight. If the woman I had given my heart to could betray me so easily, how could I ever trust another person? The thought of starting over with someone new felt exhausting, and if I was being honest, terrifying. So instead of dealing with those emotions, I buried myself in work. My business became my escape, my safe space. Numbers don't lie, profits don't cheat, and success doesn't whisper empty promises in your ear at night. If I couldn't have stability in love, I'd at least have it in my career. And for a while, that worked. The long hours kept me distracted, and I didn't have to think about what I had lost that much. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a permanent solution. I knew I couldn't hide behind my work forever. One day, I'd try again. One day, I'd probably meet someone who would prove that love isn't always a game of deception. But not today. Not now. I was still picking up the pieces of the life I thought I had. So now I want to hear from you. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you have handled it differently? Would you have tried to work things out? Or would you have walked away like I did? And the biggest question, could you ever forgive a betrayal like this? Because I know myself. Even if I had tried, I don't think I could ever look at her the same way again. Let me know in the comments. I want to hear what you guys think. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who might be ignoring the red flags in their own relationship, send this to them. Let them see how quickly trust can be shattered. Like the video if you made it this far, it really helps. And before I go, I'll leave you with this. The truth always comes out, even when you least expect it.